When did it all start? Was it in kindergarten, when the teacher lavished praise on me for my creative effort and pinned it on the bulletin board? When I showed my creative free spirit by getting a detention for leading a revolution in the girls' bathroom by running and jumping and acting like a 5-year-old hellion? Sounds like a promising beginning to me. Moving on 3 or 4 years, there was a summer when my mother and I visited family friends who had a cottage on an island in Georgian Bay. I was sitting outside one day drawing a picture of the cottage, sitting on its rocky foundation with a few trees that had that lovely scent you get when the sun bounces off the rocks and the air is fragrant with pine perfume, when a man in a boat drew up. He was a friend of the family and paused to make a comment on my drawing and disappeared into the cottage. It meant nothing to me at the time, but apparently my work had been commented on by A.Y. Jackson. Later, my mother explained to me that he was a very good artist and showed me a painting that was hanging in the cottage and pointed out to me that the way the trees had branches mainly on one side of their trunks indicated the direction of the prevailing winds. All through this period, and in fact, for the rest of her life, there was a person who was integrated into my life as just another, kind of, adopted member of the extended family, who was an artist and curator, with any conversation naturally woven around the arts. Patty O'Brien and her brother Michael came to Canada from England from 1940 to 1945 as wartime children who went to school in the town of Barrie. Her parents were good friends of my parents, so these two became a large part of our family life. After the war, Patty returned to England and was educated in the arts, but returned to Canada when she married a man who was given a position at the university in London, Ontario. Patty ended up working at the Art Gallery in London as a co-curator and later as the curator, and was a major artistic influence in the area, as well as producing her own paintings. So she continued to be a major artistic influence in my life. I visualize her sitting on her split rail fences, painting the distant hills, and remembering well the portraits she painted of myself and my siblings. At 6 years old, I still remember sitting extraordinarily still and not blinking while she painted me. She would only have been in her early 20s at the time, so her work was quite exceptional. My brother's portrait in particular was the best, as she painted it in the layered manner of Cézanne, who she admired greatly. Yes, there was much talk of Cézanne. If you are interested in knowing more about her, you can Google her and see her quite extensive profile. In the small victories category, there was a time when I was a teenager and entered a painting in a local jury show, with mine being accepted and sold for the princely sum of $12. The same jury show a year later won me an honorable mention. As a shy teenager competing against adults, this was quite a boost to my self-esteem. Life moved on, and I attended the Ontario College of Art from 1962 to 1966, and was privileged to have been taught by some renowned and formidable artists like Eric Fifield, a master of drawing, anatomy, and portraits, among many, many other things. Carl Schaefer, one of Canada's wartime artists, who instilled a love of watercolor painting in me. And William Roberts, another watercolorist who excelled in clean designs in his paintings of his landscapes west of Toronto, though I do them an injustice by just mentioning those limited disciplines. Life has a habit of rolling on, and I ended up in Sarnia as a co-curator of the art gallery above the library. But this was a time long before computers, so the job description would have been very different than that of the staff running the gallery above this library. This gallery, however, was able to host traveling shows, and there was some exceptional work that would turn up sometimes. I had the honor of meeting A.J. Casson, who was the guest artist at one of these shows. Another very important person I met at a show opening was my husband, who was a journalist for the local newspaper and was assigned to do a story on one of these show openings. He took a terrific photo of me looking at a print of an owl by Kinojawak Ashevak, an Inuit artist from Cape Dorset. The dress I had on was pretty artsy, with a bold, abstract design that fit in well as a counterpart to that print, even though the dress was a bit on the short side, as was the fashion at the time. Life was interesting as I moved through its many incarnations, but I always was drawing and painting to a greater or lesser degree, depending on the circumstances, and pretty nearly always recording my surroundings wherever we were living. In the country, it was weathered barns, rolling hills, snake fences, snowdrifts with their attendant snow fences, adding a touch of color to an otherwise stark landscape, and the glorious colors and bright skies of an eastern autumn. If we were in town, I drew and painted urban landscapes, and later in life carried a sketchbook and pencil crayons to record a road trip. In 1981, we traveled to Penticton to visit my brother and also some friends in Vancouver. We were established in Ontario, but knew then that at some time we would like to move west. The opportunity came in 1994 when we moved to the town of Greenwood, where he owned and operated the small newspaper there for 3 years. At that time, the paintings portrayed a more arid landscape, and there was a change in my palette. Then it was back to Ontario for 7 years for family reasons, and the bright reds returned to my work. And finally, in 2006, we returned to the West Coast to live in beautiful Powell River. It was goodbye reds again, to be replaced by softer grays, blues, and greens, with orange added from the sunsets and that reflection on the water. Being retired now, I could pursue my artwork more vigorously and shared an art studio space on Marine with Lee Mackenzie and Alexine Silver for 3 years, and later became a member of the Artique Art Cooperative. Lorna Downey and I shared a studio in a wonderful space at the Rodmay Hotel for 5 years, and there was an art show at VIU and another with Lorna Downey a couple of years later. There was lots of work to do from the annual studio tour at the end of August, with my location changing from the studio space to join up with a great group at the Cranberry Senior Centre. Occasionally, I veer off into more experimental painting, but quickly return to what seems to be my natural inclination, which is painting local landscapes and some more urban fixtures. Powell River and the Catholic region has so much beauty to offer, and it is ever changing. I'm not very up to date on the more current art scene, but thank Rick Sapella for introducing me to the names of more contemporary artists. Anything to fire up the imagination and introduce something new is always most welcome. On a recent fun note, someone from Guelph, Ontario, where I lived about 25 years ago, contacted me about getting permission to make cards of a pen and ink drawing I had done of their church for their 200th anniversary. The church was Church of Our Lady, and when I told them I still had the original drawing, they asked if I could change the name, as it was now a basilica. Well, I thought of different ways to do that, but finally admitted defeat and told them that anything I've tried would just look tacky, so they accepted it as it was. My work can be seen at Artique, the art cooperative, where there are lots of wonderful, talented artists, Paperworks, and the Artique Gallery in Lund. My paintings will continue to be shown in the library until the end of December 2026. There are also a few works on display at the Peak Office. So, to all you watching this, happy creating or happy getting inspiration, peace, and ideas from looking at others' creations.